In Paris treffe ich den Methanexperten der Internationalen Energieagentur.
Well, I'm coming from Croatia, from the ground, chasing for methane emissions. I have a lot of questions.
Lovely. Looking forward to it.
Great. Let's do the interview. First question from the ground, a technician checking on methane leaks.
We have a methane regulation in Europe. How can we make sure that methane emissions will be reduced globally?
Well, your reaction.
In the EU methane regulation, reporting verification requirements apply not only to domestic operations, but starting from 2027 and onwards also to fuels that are placed in the European market, so fuels from imports.
Second question from the ground comes from Greenpeace Croatia.
How can we make sure that oil and gas companies won't be in the future hiding their data on methane leaks?
There's been a lot of interesting data coming from satellites. We'll need to have other measurements on the ground to make sure that we have reliable data of how much methane is coming from oil and gas.
Actually, the methane emissions are completely underreported.
When we aggregate all emissions submitted officially, we get to about 40 million tons of methane emissions from the oil and gas sector. Our estimate is of 80 million tons of methane from oil and gas, so that's the double.
Why methane is so dangerous?
Methane is responsible for around 30% of the global warming to date.
To what extent the EU methane regulation could be a model?
In the EU methane regulation, we see leak detection and repair requirements, a ban on routine flaring. These are things that other countries can also do.
Isn't there a risk that we won't meet our targets?
We see a reduction in fossil fuel methane emissions of about 25% to 2030. So that's a very far cry from what we need, which is about a 75% reduction.
All those leaks, it's wasted money, about 50 billion euros a year. Why companies are burning the money?
Sometimes they are not really aware of the amount of emissions. About 40% of methane emissions from oil and gas could be abated at no net cost.
Forward-looking, what's your wish list?
Methane emissions cannot be standard industry practice, just as routine flaring can't be standard industry practice. This needs to be things of the past.